Hello strategy gaming enthusiasts, my name is AlzaboHD. If you're like me, you've probably wondered how many babies one character can create in CK3, and in today's video we are going to use and abuse every in-game mechanic to copulate and create as many children as humanly possible. While Genghis Khan might have gotten it on, our Count Chad will become a better dad, but before you decide to father 5,000 children, you'll need to know the secret strategies of fertility and how this mechanic works in Crusader Kings 3. In vanilla versions of CK3, the maximum number of children is hard-coded to be 15 for most men and 9 for most women, and largely depends on how many spouses and concubines you assign. But within the game defines and configuration files, you can clear this restriction to presumably parent a preposterous proportion of progeny. To maximize our chances of siring thousands of spawnlings, we'll need our character to live as long as possible by focusing on health modifiers, fully focus fertility to spread their seed successfully, and keep the seduction focus active at all times in order to impregnate as many maidens as physically possible. In this campaign, we'll optimize our game by selecting a stoic culture for health modifiers and the vitalist religion to reduce pregnancy complications, give us piety for every baby born, and benefit from a massive plus 10% flat fertility modifier. With the custom character creator, we can make the best possible fornicator and set our motto to reflect our fertile focus. While Chadicus was originally ginger, we'll buff him with a chrome dome, make him a 16-year-old giant, and grant him the best modifiers for fertility, health, and attractiveness, but make him horribly inept in everything else. Chadicus Maximus, our Count of Coronia, is ready to commence his campaign. Before unpausing the game, we'll marry a fecund female, assign 3 nubile concubines, and it's time to focus on temptation and the seduction of our spouse. Our nation already contains 1 vitalist holy site, but we'll need 3 to reform the religion, so in 867 AD, Chadicus declared war for the chiefdom of Jersica. Chad's invasion of his main maiden has already resulted in his first fecund son and heir, Caratitis, but one love was never enough, and our teenage titan would seduce a second in order to produce more product. It took over 3 years for Chadicus to jerk into Jersica, masterfully bait his best mate, and create alliances with his 8 children by the age of 20. To the north of our nation lay a vital holy site for us to fight, and war was waged in 872. But before we set our sights on Hyuma, it's time to say hi to AG1, the sponsor of today's video. AG1 is an all-in-one foundational nutrition drink delivered directly to your door and contains critical nutrients, vitamins, and minerals to keep you at the top of your game. As a strategy gaming enthusiast, I drink AG1 every morning to boost my concentration, and all you need is a single scoop of AG1 powder, a spoon to mix it in a glass, and you're already ready to benefit from increased energy, increased focus, and increased endurance to play all day. AG1 is for everyone and is lifestyle friendly for vegetarians, vegans, lactose and gluten intolerance, keto, and paleo, and is fast to shake and make your morning start off great. Support AlzaboHD and your physical body by checking out AG1 in the description box below. Clicking my link will grant you a 1-year supply of immune-supporting DK32 vitamins and 5 travel packs free with your first purchase. War never changes, and by 872 AD, Chad of Coronia sought to liberate Livonia of her island, formed a coalition of willing alliances, and had his island boys crush Kurasare. Chieftain Chadicus would need to win the hearts and minds of these strange and seafaring subjects, but his efforts to seduce the Estonian High Queen was cock-blocked by her hostile husband. Victory would nevertheless be achieved on the field of battle, and the island was donated, the locals thoroughly mated, and our protagonist reinvigorated. 37 is much too old for factory farming family members, and the retired Ruda would be replaced with Dorada as the sons must flow. Every time Chad became a dad, he was hit with 250,000 piety, and there's nothing quite as pious as brutally invading holy sites in distant lands, so Chad sought to plunder Poland, as is tradition. But that nubile concubine from last time came with pre-existing conditions, and Chad's 14th child was saddled with smallpox. His ex-girlfriend and simultaneous spewing spore of sentient smallpox was an option for a physician, but only Gerdanus was equipped for this rough terrain. It was a time for drastic measures, and while our son would lose his arm and face, Chadicus's own fate now lay in the balance. With a cautious snortling of corpse cocaine, he no longer felt pain or suffered from the pox, and Chad swiftly set about sending cadaver candy to his friends and family. Only 7 tested positive during this lockdown in Livonia, and while we were now safe, the same couldn't be said for the Polish periphery. You see, Chad used this time to cuck every lord and lady in the vicinity, using his romantic skills to expose each and every bastard he had ever sired, while his Curonian army conquered the holy site and chiefdom of Chelmno. Our lustful liege set out to visit the sacred grove and walked the holy path, cached his children into monarch power, and at last held the piety needed to reform his religion. When creating a religion, you naturally need fertility to create more followers, and so hedonistic pleasure turned to carnal exaltation, as our shagger sovereign made lustful loins a virtue and increased our fertility by over 20. Love would be free for LGBT, and male adultery is okay, but we'll leave the ladies to pray as we run out of piety for today. This religious reformation transformed the Chad nation, and Chadicus's congregation of 9 lovers would get down to the baby business. Every sanctioned event would now involve fornication, and even hunting trips couldn't be complete without conjugal visitation. Good things come in small packages, just ask the Estonian queen, and while our king was slithering in and out of the bedroom, the Curonian army was marching on Prussia. While he might have his way with Nimmel's lands, the Jarl of Prussia's hands were having their way with Chadicus's crouching tiger, but this trip was about business and not pleasure. His horniness would bed both the lord and lady of this polity, impregnating the lands with Maximus' hands and heirs before sending in the military. Both of his lustful lovers would have to come under new management, and in 883, Chadicus declared a holy war for the Duchy of Prussia. Their walls would be sieged, their women would be breached, and Baltic boat allies mopped up what was left of any defenses. Chadicus's polygamous partner and lover, the Lady of Prussia, died from distress, and within 18 months, our former fling and gay king of the polity submitted his crown and country to Curonian control. The Baltic boys are back in town, but only the sons of Chadicus would inherit this land, and in what some may say may be a pro-gamer move, Chad procured Prussia and secretly swapped sovereignties. This polity might be divided, but our lad's ambitions are larger than that of his family tree. You see, our Baltic brethren, the Lord of Livonia, was distracted in war, so naturally it was time for Chadicus to strive for more land, and in 885 AD he declared a special operation to liberate the Latvian nation. In keeping with tradition, Chadicus smashed off his daughter's leg to save her from smallpox, and after enjoying the art of amputation, began converting his prisoners into polearms to impale something other than his human mounts. Chadicus the Impaler has, by the age of 36, already sired almost as many spawnlings as his birth age, ferociously fences on both teams, and soon swiped right on anything that moved. Medieval DMs forged pickup gems like, "I only wish to have you close that I may know if you're a corpse," and "I am twice as pretty as your spineless wife," but Chadicus preferred cucking the counts of neighboring counties by seducing their spouses and mastering the art of the deal. At the end of the day, the best way to end a war is kidnapping children and selling them on the black market, but before we finish, we'll need to buy some vowels. Chad must disregard females to acquire currency, and make markets to generate cash flow. Sieging Latvia has resulted in surrender, and after 3 years of war, Prussia has procured Parmu, Riga, and the High Chiefdom of Livonia. Chadicus then invited his plentiful progeny into the family business, granting them titles to all annexed lands. But his real passion was hunting game, particularly dames who gave him artifacts to boost the success of his seed and legitimize bastards in need. With his wife wilting in middle age, Chadicus traded her in for a Tingri tribeswoman, bumping this premenopausal maiden to continue spouting out successors and bolster his bounteous loins. His groin, however, fared far less well after thumping Engelberga, and Chadicus was now free to spread VD to Italy and beyond. Estonia yearned for annexation, but our liege had other obligations, namely extorting each and every son and daughter he's ever fathered. He's also father of Italy's first daughter and heir, named in honor of the woman who gave him lover's pox, who coincidentally also has VD at the age of 3 days old. His blistering and infected bloodline would in time become sacred. Estonia would be erased, the Latgalians would learn their place, and Bruene possibly sat on his face. But within this Baltic space yearned an ancestral ambition, and in 895 AD, Chadicus fulfilled this mission by uniting the Baltics and becoming Lord of all the Balts. The kingdom of Livonia had come at last, and Chadicus was now figuratively and potentially father of all sons and daughters of this domain. Lord Maximus's first order as king would relocate the capital to Riga, a logical choice as the newly forged kingdom would need a Latvia of land to reconnect the Prussian periphery with his Livonian heartland. And speaking of hearts, the queens of Italy, Polabia, and Greater Moravia were all Chad's lovers and producing royal heirs across Europe. But romance is not about quantity, it's about quality, and this lad was glad to obtain a wing cat. We'll need our hero to live as long as possible, so we'll instruct him in a path to health, have him pet his puss properly, and cautiously conquer the second largest empire in Eastern Europe. Sacking Novgorod requires fitness, and Chadicus's charge into battle granted him an athletic body and direct custody over King Helgi, who found himself captured only 3 months into the war. With Novgorod automatically ceded in surrender, Chadicus watered his newfound lands with his 60 sons and granted them title to all of Russia. He would never give his puss the boot, and while laying with the Queen of Bohemia, Chadicus realized that the lands to his west would make a good catch. While pillaging Poland, Chadicus kidnapped a royal Polish Piast princess and made her his concubine, bade her watch the annexation of Gdansk, and it was time to leave Bavaria before the cucked king had either one of our king's 2 heads. Further into Polabia, the polity of Polotsk would be procured. The cucked king of Moravia refused to acknowledge our son as his heir, and venereal disease would flow its beautiful breeze amongst all of our lovers. Sharing is caring after all, but Chadicus's leper daughter refused his sacred seed, leaving her flirty father heartbroken and sick with a disease other than an STD. Abstaining from sex for 1 hour unlocked powers some consider unnatural, and in time our ruler would heal his heart. But the battle for the heart of Prussia was only getting started, and in 903 AD he declared war on Samogotia to unite the Prussian periphery with our Baltic property. To fund this war, Chad will rely on reverse child support payment and saved on soldiers by fielding his friends and family. The great Moravian monarch rejected diplomatic channels, but a friend in need is a friend with seed, and thus a Bavarian queen fell to Chad's cream. If you sleep with Chad, you're going to get at least 1 STD, and by 904 AD, his lustful lineage has spread to over 101 living members, and if at first you don't succeed to spread your seed, try again. Love is a battlefield, and Chadicus's own son slew his Lithuanian lover boy. The fair lady of Frisia was seduced, and the battle to square out Memel resulted in Samogotia's subjugation. Livonia must become a land of law and authority, but Chadicus, as always, was busy breaking bread with Bulgarian queens and cucking kings. By 906 AD, the queens of Bulgaria, Italia, Bavaria, Frisia, Moravia, Polabia, and more were in love and siring the seed of our sovereign, and half of Europe was in bed with our head of state. But the Bulgarian king had to bust our balls and called for the imprisonment of his adulterous queen, blinded her so that she may never again see perfection, and swore revenge upon our hospitable house. At least Chad's got 69 spare heirs. The new queen of Italy loves our lewd letters, and venereal disease is so bad that our sons start off with STDs before their 16th birthday. Chadicus needed a change, to travel somewhere new, and while on pilgrimage plowed through the teenaged queen of Polabia. He had found his holy path, legitimized his sacred seed, and had his fastest steed carry him to Paris, where the French queen abolished the border between her pleasure and bacterial warfare. Chadicus probably needs a regent to rule while he's out juggling 20+ lovers, and before long, dissent and despair lingered through the air. A Lithuanian heretic and subject by the name of Markus had drawn a line in the sand and declared that if Chadicus wouldn't stop his rite of the first night, he'd have to put up a fight, and a treasonous war of tyranny was declared against our Livonian liege in 910 AD. Thankfully, this nefarious NPC was captured quite quickly and uneventfully. The war is over, and it's time to go home. The rebels were yeeted of their holdings, and the captives converted into shillings. This garlic king, as Chad would be known, had a strong seed and rigid bed, spawning children everywhere through breaking bread. While worthless wenches formed the plurality of the production of Chad's progeny, the world would know of each and every bastard born of the Maximus dynasty, even those belonging to Bavarian royalty. Hunting game was often replaced by hunting dames, petting Puss in Boots, and sneaking into Constantinople to bond with blinded Byzantine biddies. It was time for our liege to slither into Slutsk, commence copulation with slithering old babushkas, and to plunder Poland of her property. Chad had 88 kids, and each gets property, and at the age of 67, Chadicus is healthy and happy. Reaming the Swedish queen awarded him with Scandinavian spawnlings, East English aristocracy awarded us with more prison posse, and poaching peasant ladies granted Chadicus his third fertility charm to fulfill his whole of body. More Polish lands awaited our promiscuous protagonist, but while queens and kings fell for Chadicus's memes, his own queen exiled him into the friend zone. Nice guys like Chadicus constantly care and tear off territories for their wives, but divorce is preferable to friendship. Besides, hunchback younglings make for better queens. In the court of our Crimson King, heretical high chieftains of non-noble lineage threatened to cleave our crown into civil war, but he died, so everything's fine. In time, Chadicus would birth his 100th son, Sinthus Maximus, and soon set his sights on ravaging Ruthenia to the south. War was declared on King Halfdan in 921 AD, and Ruthenia was about to get ravaged. These battles were hard fought, Maximus' brethren were slain in combat, and as expected, Chadicus was too busy bumbling in the bushes and birthing bastards to care. Concerned courtiers then attempted to sway their sovereign into chastity, but that's heresy. Back on the battlefield, our 90th son Lonkagogavi died to our brother-in-law, and while on the surface things looked calm and steady, turmoil was just around the corner. You see, stress is like a spiral, and between bastards being born every Tuesday and sons dying every Wednesday, every member of the Maximus dynasty, even the younglings, lashed out at their liege in holy fury. Every infant of every sub-dynasty was suddenly dying of stress due to this unrest, and at the worst moment of this time of trouble, more than 6 of our children were dropping every day. At this point, you might say, hey, Alzabo, why not reload the save to save your family? At the end of the day, an unalive child still counts in the profile page, but unlike me, Chadicus isn't a sociopath, and eventually the stress forced him into a life of veganism. Even infants at 12 days of age are getting down with the sickness of stress, and in the space of only a year, the Maximus dynasty has fallen from a height of over 420 members to only 267 extended family, and of our 109 direct children, over 60% of them have ascended into heaven. If we are to stop the stress spiral from destroying our dynasty, we'll have to resort to drastic measures, like letting Chad cook dinner. As with any Maximus gathering, our surviving children and grandchildren are busy breaking bread in bread, but the scheme has succeeded, and, at least for now, things have returned to normal. In 4 years of death and despair, we've managed to capture Kiev, marking this operation the most costly campaign of our entire game. If you survived, congratulations, you get a parcel of land, but damn, it turns out all of our vassals absolutely despise our existence. At least our granddaughters and grandsons are enjoying family fun. Our liege laid with every woman on his way to the sacred site of Iuma, and billions of bastards were birthed and legitimized. Of course, some people can never be pleased, and rebel scum soon found themselves falling to their knees. This was a time of rebuilding and recouping our losses, and at the age of 79, Chadicus is feeling fine. Sacking Galicia gave our protagonist a human horn, and Chad now holds 4 trinkets that confer fertility, effectively maxing out his fecundity. The seed is strong, he whispers under his breath. Volhynia was swept into the fold, and each of our wives has a shelf life of about 2 months, before they hate us for infidelity and are in turn replaced with another face. But our octogenarian craves legacy, and in 933 AD, Chadicus set his sights on expanding into the Khazar Khaganate, the largest empire the medieval world has ever known. Rather than leading from the front lines, Chadicus has opted to go down his line of lineage and concubined his great-granddaughters. The Khagan's son was subsequently captured, a great-granddaughter concubine was elevated to main maiden, and our seed is slowly returning with over 400 descendants and nearly 150 sons and daughters. Honestly, the genetic propensity and fertility of House Maximus is so great that min-maximusizing our liege with teenage great-granddaughters is the optimal play, and back in the fray, our army has annihilated the heathen horde. In spite of mass starvation for our troops in the Khazar nation, the occupation of the Golden Hills marked a turning point, and the Khagan would kowtow after only 4 years. The lands of Livonia, now Khazaria, stretched from the Baltic to the Black Sea, but our garlic king was not keen on continuing the Khazar traditions. Instead, the Empire of Breedistan was born in 937 AD, bringing fertility and limitless loins to Eastern Europe. The previous rabbinic rulers, now vassals, were forcibly converted to vitalism. Every week, a dozen family members need to be manually married off, and the clutches of cancer have claimed Chadicus. Our Lord of Love is open-minded and willing to try new things, but an orgy in the Welsh tradition was entirely unexpected, though quite effective. But breaking bread with goats and their respective oats had not cured Chadicus of cancer, and for the first time in history, our king's health has fallen and can't get up. Fortunately, the seed is strong, border gore is no more, and fat stacks of ducats from friends and family have blessed our treasury. That said, medieval money is no cure for cancer, and concurrent conquests into Pomerania have produced more foes for our fiefdom. Chadicus is a boat to die, and in 940 AD, at the age of almost 90, he burned alive on his yacht due to the malicious machinations of an unknown assailant. In the space of his 74-year reign, our insane and fertile fornicator has birthed over 150 sons and daughters, almost 500 dynastic members, and leaves the reins of Breedistan in the hands of his great-grandson heir, the fair-hair High King Liew. While we might have reached the end of Chad's chapter in life, our story doesn't have to end here.
If you impregnate the like button and seduce the subscription box, I might even read your comments, so let me know below if you're a map staring pro. This video was made in partnership with AG1, and I invite you to check out their link in the description box below to support the channel. We also have a Patreon, an affiliate Nexus Game Store, and basic attention token donation page if you'd like to pay my wage in cups of coffee. Remember to always use protection, and it's time to roll the credits.